Sir, I'm exhausted. How are you?
I also am exhausted. Shall we discuss our various reasons for being exhausted?
Sure, let us. Why are you exhausted,
go first.
Sir?
Oh, why am I? Okay, whatever. I'll go first. I don't care. I just am. It's one of those things where, you've been under pressure for a pretty fair amount of time, and the pressure finally starts to back off a little bit, and, things are relaxing, and you just realize how tired you are. Yeah. It kind of catches up with you all at once.
The fact that you can't rest is no longer preventing you from feeling the fatigue that you're feeling.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
That is correct. So that's where I am. That's why I am currently in my state of pretty much just exhausted.
Well, that's not the worst state of exhaustion, because that means that's a temporary state.
Yes.
Assuming things continue to be backed off.
I hope so. It's looking pretty good.
Good. I am glad to hear that.
I can get back to regular things now, like this transit RPG thing that has been backburnered for 2 months, and people keep pestering me about. Where is it? What's going on?
Oh,
guys, patience.
Isn't it gratifying to have people that are excited to have the fruits of your labor?
It is. But it's at some point, it's like, okay, I know, but please, just give me a couple more days, maybe a couple of weeks, whatever. I just need to kind of find my feet again. I know they're on the end of my leg, but I'm not sure which leg and where they've gone to. So, yeah, we'll be getting back to that soon. But I have this other thing to do first, which I imagine has probably become the source of your exhaustion to a certain degree.
It has become a lot of the source of my exhaustion. So, not all of it, to be totally honest. Which I assume we are both talking about the book/Kickstarter issue.
Right. The thing we've hardly ever mentioned on here before. The thing that is at about $72,000 currently.
Actually, currently, as of the time anybody's listening to this, it has just ended.
Oh, that's true.
So if you, sir, have a last bet for what it's going to hit, now is the time, because it will be.
I just know that your people are out there waiting, going, I'm not going to pledge yet. I know it's going to fund, but I'm not going to pledge yet. I've been saving 2 paychecks to make a giant pledge. And then they're going to jump, and it's going to be $100,000 before you know it.
I have actually gotten word from people who are waiting until the end.
Right.
In fact, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4 messages I have received over various channels now that all basically amount to, I know it's already funded, and I know I don't have to wait or anything, but I always wait till the end. It's just the sort of person I am, so I'm going to pledge at the end.
And I imagine it probably helps with scheduling and finances and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You don't have to set aside, the $150 that you're going to pledge for 3 or 4 copies of the book. for like a month or so.
Yeah, no, from what I've heard, and talked to Jim and talked to several other people who ran Kickstarters successfully and before I started this, to know about everything that I could. You usually get a surge in the last 2 days.
Yeah.
And part of that is Kickstarter actually, if someone's been following your project, Kickstarter sends out an email when you hit that last 48 hours to all of those people who hit, remind me about this project. And then they decide whether to back or not. So yeah. But at this point, I don't remember the exact time it is set to end. But probably exactly the time you started it. No. We actually set the time manually.
Okay.
So it was actually technically slightly longer than 30 days. It was like 30 days and some hours.
Oh, okay.
But for what that matters.
Sure, that'll make all the difference. Those some hours.
I think it's like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, so it'll be ending. So I guess potentially if you're listening to this early enough, it could still be running and you've got a chance to get in there.
Yeah. If you haven't taken that chance already, or maybe this is your first time listening and you don't know what we're talking about. We should explain yet again what the book is about.
There'll be a link in the show notes.
Oh, okay.
Just go to the Kickstarter page and check it out. I'm tired of talking about it.
All righty.
I hate to say it has been like all consuming. I'm sort of sick of it.
Are you sure you're an author? You don't want to talk about your book? I want to know who really wrote this now.
There were no swears in it, so obviously it wasn't me.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And let me tell you, that's a tricky thing to do.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much that had become a part of it, but I'm trying not to make it too much just for my personal audience.
Right.
Because I really do want this to be an effective introduction to role-playing games for, anybody. Or at least anybody who doesn't mind being at least snarked at. But I did cut I am cutting all the false swearing out of the book.
What?
Yeah. Well, it is also the most controversial thing I do, according to pretty much everyone.
Okay. Well, I guess if that's the most controversial thing you do, you're doing pretty good.
Every time somebody puts one of my articles up on Reddit, someone jumps in and says, I can't read this guy's stuff because he can't swear for real. It's okay. Your mom's not reading it. You're allowed to swear on the internet. Grow up. and that gets like 100 upvotes.
I don't understand why that is a sign of having grown up.
Yeah, because to me, from what I remember of childhood, when you were 10 years old and you learned a new swear that you weren't supposed to say, the first thing you did was go to school and run around on the playground saying it at the top of your lungs to everybody.
That's what I remember.
Right?
Mm-hmm. You were happy to whip that bad boy out and see who you could shock with it.
Was the old Far Side comic? It was a Dilbert comic where he was talking about the history of swearing through the ages.
Right.
And he said once upon a time swearing was so shocking that you could actually get people to burst into flames. And there's this guy it's like a cowboy and he's going, bull feathers. And there's a woman bursting into flames and screaming in the background. Do you remember Far Side, by the way?
I do remember Far Side. Do you know what I linked to today on my Twitter? Is
it the same video I watched that is making me bring up Far Side?
I probably could be, yes. I remember trying to watch that the first time it was on TV back in '94 or whatever it is. And it was okay. I mean, it was Far Side, but it was not like, it wasn't something that belonged on TV. It was just too disjointed and too goofy. It's for those who don't know what I'm talking about, it's a Far Side TV special that came out in '94 and aired on, I think it was CBS.
Oh.
It was totally inexplicable. There was no real reason why it should do that. It's Tales from the Far Side.
I never saw that.
I know. Dad and I tried to watch it. I mean, we viewed the entire thing, but we weren't sure what we had seen or why exactly. And we were both fans of the Far Side comic, so we kind of knew what it was going to be like, but good grief. It was weird. It has no continuity between one thing and the next, even though there are transitions that lead from one thing to the other thing. It's hard to explain. It just feels very disjointed and very, very piecemeal.
Well, it's only 20 minutes. I'll have to come to think of it. I think I did sit and watch this with my dad because he was the one who got me into the Far Side.
Uh-huh.
But I actually thought it was going to turn out that you had watched the same YouTube video about 2 days ago. The channel Today I Found Out. They did a brief retrospective of the Far Side.
Oh, no. I found the actual video.
So
it's in my Twitter feed if you want it. I will link it in the show notes because that's what I do.
And I just provided a link to that retrospective so that you can add that to the show notes as well.
Nice.
There's so much that came out. I love there was actually a story that they didn't bring up in that video. They talked about the Thagomizer. Do you remember the story of the Thagomizer?
I do. Yes. It's now an official descriptive term for that particular part of that particular dinosaur.
Yeah, it was the spiky tail end of the Stegosaurus.
Mm-hmm.
But there was another story too. I guess we should say, for anybody who doesn't know, The Far Side was a single panel newspaper comic strip that was primarily dealt with biology, naturalism, science in general, and general weirdness.
Yeah. Very, very surrealist in nature.
One of my favorite stories about that, though, was, do you remember the Jane Goodall story?
Yes, I love the Jane Goodall story because I feel like the Jane Goodall story happens in more places than just with Jane Goodall.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to tell it or do you want to tell it?
You can tell it. Oh.
Okay, so
as long as someone tells it.
The story starts out with Larson having drawn a panel for the regular, for his regular Far Side comic, in which one chimp, who I believe is wearing glasses, very matronly glasses.
Yeah.
And a second chimp are sitting on a branch. And the matronly looking chimp is plucking things out of the male chimp in much the way that, chimps groom each other and whatnot.
Right. And they are clearly a married chimp couple.
Yes, very clearly.
And she
don't ask me how that's made clear, but they are.
Because of what she says, she pulls the thing off of him and says, "Oh, another blonde hair. I see you're doing a little more research with that Jane Goodall tramp."
Yes, it's beautiful.
Oh,
and it's
hilarious.
Funny. It's absolutely hilarious, and nobody could possibly take offense at that, except that apparently Jane Goodall did take offense at that. At least members of her organization took offense at that and wrote a very stern letter to Mr. Gary Larson.
Claiming, by the way, that Jane Goodall herself had been offended.
Yes, that was the big claim.
Yeah.
And I think Gary had some experience of Jane Goodall before and suspected that was not actually the case, or somebody in his organization did, or at the syndicate or something. Anyway, somebody knew Jane Goodall and knew that she wasn't likely to have taken offense at that. So wrote to her, explained what was going on, showed her the comic, and she wrote to Larson and said, "No, this is hilarious." It was basically, she was fine with it. She laughed at it. She thought it was great. And I don't know whatever happened to that person in her organization, but maybe they got talked to about having a sense of humor.
Well, the funny thing too, eventually the Jane Goodall Institute did take that comic and use it as a T-shirt design.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
the Far Side was much more influential than people realize for something that, like, nowadays nobody remembers it. Like, I mean, obviously we remember it, we reminisce about it, but it's not something that had like that enduring thing. Like, people recognize Calvin and Hobbes today. Mm-hmm. Even if they weren't old enough to, have read Calvin and Hobbes in the newspaper.
Right.
But very few people I've talked to, outside of a particular generation, know anything about the Far Side.
Yeah, which is a shame.
I mean, he has a louse named after it. Was it a louse?
Yeah, it's a louse. Yeah. It's a Gary Larsoni. Yeah, something like that. But it's Strigophilius. That means owl loving, doesn't it? Strigophilius. Sure.
Gary Larsoni, which is named after Gary Larson. Oh, it's a chewing louse found only on owls. Yeah.
There you go.
Man,
it's amazing how you do that.
Oh, jeez.
The thing of it was, for one thing, you never found Gary Larson characters on the back of somebody's Chevy pickup whittling onto the Ford logo.
Yeah, how did that happen?
I don't know. I'm not sure. But the other thing is, There have been a number of imitators since Larson quit drawing the comic. And there are current imitators I just noticed the other day in the newspaper that are in the same vein, but so what I live in perpetual fear of is that somebody is going to look at the Far Side cartoons and go, oh, well, he's just copying so-and-so, and it will turn out to have been so-and-so is actually, doing the thing that Larson did.
Right, because they keep having people who are trying to capture the same lightning in a bottle that Larson captured.
Right, which you can't really do.
No, you can't, because nobody's Larson except Gary Larson.
That's right. Cow tools is all you need for proof.
With the single most confusing comic ever that nobody understood.
Nobody understands it. It's a cow standing in front of a table with various shaped implements on the table, and the caption is just cow tools.
And some of the implements, they look vaguely like tools. Like there's one that that looks like a melted handsaw, like a Salvador Dali handsaw.
Mm-hmm. And he admitted sometime later that was his big mistake with that comic.
Making the one that looked like a saw.
Yes. Because that set everybody off. And okay, what are the rest of them,
And then his newspaper and all the other newspapers that carried it, because it was nationally syndicated, were getting letters all week from people like, could you explain to us, cow? We just don't get it. There are some impassioned letters that like, look, in our department, we've had, 3 PhDs and a master's all look at this and they don't understand it. What's going on? And his point was only that, human beings are unique in that they're the only animals that can make and use tools. And so if other animals tried to make tools, they would be terrible. Which, when you explain it, isn't that funny, but...
No, it's not. Cows would be terrible.
He was having an off day, really.
Yeah. No opposable thumbs. No fingers, just hooves. Yeah. It'd be rough. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that he went through and did. He really, I'm serious. He really sort of started the whole oddball observational single panel surrealist comic.
Yeah. Yeah. He invented the genre and nobody's been able to pull it off since.
No. There's a collection. I really would love to get this collection someday. But not right away. There is like a bound hardcover collection of every single cartoon he's ever done. It
is beautiful, sir.
It is, I know.
My father has it. We bought it for him years and years ago for a Christmas present.
Nice.
We also bought him the bound 3-volume Calvin and Hobbes set.
Cool.
Which was another fantastic comic.
The other bound volume I wanted of Daily Comics, and this is multi-volume set, is Bloom County.
Yeah, I was never a huge Bloom County fan.
Oh, man. Bloom County was a lot of fun, especially if you're like 12 or 13 and don't really get all the politics being discussed. It's just some little weird sort of sometimes ongoing adventure comic, and sometimes, just single shot jokes and that kind of stuff. It's just a lot of fun. And it starred a penguin, so, how bad can it be?
There was a whole thing with the blonde, ultra-conservative child, like, worshipping Oliver North, wasn't there?
Milo Bloom, yes. Yeah.
And a joke that has aged fantastically.
Yeah, it's great. Well, see, the funny thing is, okay, so here's the funny bit. When he stopped making Bloom County, when Berkeley Breathed stopped making Bloom County, the way he ended it was that Trump bought up all of Bloom County and kicked everybody out. Okay? So Bloom County started up again here very recently. Want to guess why? Because 2 years ago, Trump started running for president, and Berkeley Breathed figured, well, if he can come back, I can come back.
So, well, now wait a minute. Is Bloom County still owned then by Trump?
I don't know because I didn't catch the first few, and they only show up on Facebook.
Huh.
So I'm not really sure what's going on exactly, but they're there and they're kind of back. I'm sure there will be collected editions. I think it's just great. It's like, yeah. But yeah, I would love to have the bound volumes. I mean, they've got collected volumes, in soft cover and all that. But I'd like the nicely bound hardcovered Bloom County ones.
I actually sort of miss older political cartoons.
Yeah.
When it was like funnier, subtler, and not nearly as mean-spirited. And you could make fun of everything kind of equally.
Right.
Nowadays, it's just people swearing about people. Like, remember the Capitol Steps? I mean, I think they're still doing it, right?
I think so.
Every year we would get their new album.
Yeah, see, that was never a thing for us.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah.
How do you solve a problem like Scalia?
But the thing is that I was only ever really aware of 3 political cartoons, 3 daily strip political cartoons, Doonesbury, Bloom County, and the other one used to show up every once in a while on the sports page.
Mm-hmm.
Shoe. And I don't know why. It was just every once in a while, Shoe would be politically aligned and it would show up in the sports page.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know why. I have no idea why. That's the one with the eagle is like a reporter or something. I don't know. Or the owl? Was it the owl? It was the owl. It made no sense. Okay, I don't know. I'll link to it and you can try to figure it out.
So that one made no sense as the guy who was just talking about the penguin and Bill the cat doing political commentary.
That's right. And I have their record around here somewhere. Billy and the Boingers bootleg.
No kidding.
No kidding. Yeah. Side 1 is You Stink But I Love You.
Aw.
And side 2, I'm going to forget right now, is I'm a Boinger. That's what it is. Huh. With Bill the Cat playing the electric tongue. The other thing you don't see in like your daily comics much anymore, unless it's the very old school stuff, is continuing storyline adventures. Sure, Prince Valiant is still out there if you can read Prince Valiant. And there's a few others, because the Spider-Man comics are still being produced.
Yeah, I remember the Spider-Man one.
See, we had Prince Valiant, but we never had Spider-Man. I didn't even know there was a Spider-Man one until much, much later.
See, I don't think I even recall there was a Prince Valiant one.
Yeah, I never read Prince Valiant. I couldn't. I tried, but it was too much like reading a book, and I could just go read a book instead. They're very expository. But anyway, the point I'm making is the reason I mention this is because I collected up all the old Popeye Thimble Theater cartoons. In their hardbound volumes, and it is just like one rolling story after another in those. With all the attendant jokes and witty commentary and political stuff and all that, but it's all in this adventure that's going on. And I really would like somebody to bring that back to the comic pages on a regular basis.
Well, even some comics that weren't adventure comics did that. Like, what was the saccharine but still amusing Canadian family comic? It was
For Better or Worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That if you read that every day, it was an ongoing story, And what was Bill Amen's one with the super nerdy kid?
Yes,
Foxtrot.
The Foxtrot. I love that one. That is great.
I love Foxtrot. Foxtrot would do like
No, I love Foxtrot.
No, I Fox. But he would do ongoing stories.
Yeah.
Like he would do arcs.
Yeah, but it's not the same thing as what I'm talking about. I don't think they weren't these sort of raucous adventure kind of things, you know?
Yeah.
They were. I mean, they were good little arcs and whatnot, and that was great. But they weren't these sort of adventure, you know, highly imaginative kind of things like the Popeye stuff was. But you know, come to think of it, there is a lot of that in webcomics now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you've got your Orders of the Sticks and your what's another one?
Can't think of another one, can you?
Goblins.
And
some other stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know? Bruno the Bandit, which I think they don't make anymore, but is still archived on Bruno the Bandit. But anyway, it's all kind of gone by the wayside, more or less, in terms of the daily comics, which I also have to say are getting, as you know, as us old folks do say, are getting less and less relevant and more stupid. Try to read your local. Well, of course, in Chicago, I don't know what you've got. Around here, it's Garfield, Beetle Bailey, that kind of stuff. High and Lois. Something like that. And Blondie and reruns of Peanuts and Garfield, and it's not very good.
I have to say, sir, I have not gotten a newspaper in 3 years. They offered me delivery, and I have the internet. Well, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously. I do occasionally, like, we have a couple of free local papers, and occasionally I will grab one of those while I'm in the store so that I have something to put down on the desk when I'm painting miniatures.
Right.
Currently I have a Chinese paper. So. Well,
you've got the whole Chicago Tribune thing going on there, right?
So they say.
Which is, I think Tribune Media is another cartoon syndicate. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. It might just be King Features in that other one that I can't ever remember. But anyway, I don't know. Anyway, somebody send me a photo of today's Chicago Tribune comic section so I know what the heck I'm talking about. Somebody will. You watch.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
You watch. In fact, here we go. Here's an assignment for everybody. Take a picture of your local newspaper's comics section and send it to me. At DigressionsandDragons@gmail.com. That can't possibly go wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least half the audience is going to go, newspapers?
What's that?
What?
It's like a printout of the internet we used to get every week delivered to our house.
Do we have any corrections that we need to cover? Because we had some corrections last time.
I made two mistakes. That's not a very regular occurrence.
No, it's not. No, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't correcting the corrections or follow up to the corrections or... Anyway.
I only do one round of corrections. If I screwed up anything in the corrections, well, that's going to have to stand now.
Oh, okay. Ambassador Jesse? Is that the official name? Ambassador Jesse?
That is what Jesse referred to himself as.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Okay, Ambassador Jesse commenting on episode 40, which I believe was our last episode, our previous episode? No. Yes.
I think it's the previous episode anybody heard.
Right.
Because tomorrow
from the time of recording
goes out.
Exactly.
Right.
See, we've got it straightened out. All this time stuff, it's all good. Anyway, Ambassador Jesse commenting on episode 40 says, I've run my games where social encounters incorporate the classical modes of persuasion. If you want to appeal to the NPC's logos, you use intelligence. To pathos, wisdom. To ethos, charisma. Different NPCs will be more receptive to different approaches, and I try to give cues of varying subtlety. So I assume you have this in here because you have something you want to say about that, because there's no question here.
No, there is no question there. I just thought it was actually a really neat approach to it. I like the idea of breaking it down along those lines. Pathos, ethos, and logos. Which is, but, that was it. I actually just wanted to compliment Jesse on a neat idea that intrigued me a little bit.
Okay.
I was trying to do something with a Pokemon RPG.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and trying to come up with how you would handle stats.
I can see how that would be a problem in and of itself.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems, but but one of the important things that I was looking at was with the stats of that game is that the stats for a Pokemon RPG, the trainers, the people who own the Pokemon, interact with the world almost entirely through their Pokemon. So it's almost never a trainer taking a direct action. Like, if there's a boulder in the way, they will order a Pokemon to move it for them. So the primary stats for the trainers have to be in the interaction of the Pokemon. And I was beating myself up trying to figure out, well, what different ways could you represent that? And I came up with a triple system like this, where you have 3 different basic methods of interacting. And I called it love, respect, and fear, which was, so you had one stat, which was compassion, which was basically or empathy, your ability to interact with something in a way that was, sympathetic, I guess you would call that pathos. And then the spirit approach, which would be the what did I say? Love, fear. I guess I really should remember this. Love, respect, and fear.
Yeah.
The spirit approach, that was the respect approach, where you encourage people to go along with you, or you encourage creatures to go along with you because you hold yourself to a high standard. And so you bring out the best in other people. That's respect, that's spirit. And then the third one, the fear, is that you give the impression of power of being an alpha, and so you can command others. So I backed fear off into commandment, So it came down to, compassion, or spirit or drive, and then fear or command. I kind of like this approach better now. Though I guess you don't logic a Pokemon very much.
No.
It's just an intriguing idea. I just wanted to call it out, Jesse. Good idea. That's neat.
Yeah, I feel like you might want to explain what logos means, because I think we can get ethos and pathos. Mm-hmm. Logos is a little opaque.
Well, logos is appealing to reason, using reasoned arguments, because logos is the base for logic, which is why it would be based on intelligence.
There you go.
Okay, so it's reasoned arguments, appeals to emotion, and appeals to shared values or beliefs. Okay, so logic, compassion, and shared values and beliefs. Creed. That's a good word for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. That makes sense now.
But even then, because this was all in our discussion about social interactions and stuff. And if you really get down to it, there are so many different ways to approach social interaction where you're trying to get someone to give something that they might not be inclined to give. Because if they're inclined to give it, then there's no interaction, right? I mean, from a role-playing perspective, there's no interaction. It's just, hey, can I have that thing? Oh, yeah, sure. Right?
Right. Boring.
Yeah. But I mean, how would you come up with a list? Is approach the best way to do it? I shouldn't have done this, because now I'm trying to reopen that conversation.
You are, and I'm going to tell you the same thing. Yeah. Make sure you know what the goals are.
Yeah.
Once you know what the goals are of each side, then you can decide which of those 3 things applies most to that goal and the perspective of the person who has that goal.
See, I'm more inclined, though, because I remember you saying that, and I almost want to go back a little bit and say, I think it's important to know the PC's goals. Mm-hmm. But I think in a lot of cases you could substitute, in some cases, objections for the NPC's goals. I mean, obviously their goals can be a part of it, but you could actually, if you just know why the NPC is standing against what the PCs want, that gives them a valid attack form without you having to work out everything that, what the NPC would want also, depending on how one-sided the negotiation was. I don't know. I have to think more about this.
Well, I was just sitting here, as I do, scratching it out on a piece of paper. And I think what you would do is, you have your goal, or however you want to phrase it. You can call it whatever you want, but it's basically a goal. All right. It's the thing somebody wants or doesn't want to have happen.
Right.
And then you would say, okay, let's say you want the princess's hand in marriage, and you're trying to convince the king to okay that. All right. And the king is particularly attached to the princess, right? Mm-hmm. Does not want to see her marry well below her station, which you would be.
Right.
Because you're but a common adventurer. Mm-hmm. Right? So he wants to see her marry well. That's his goal. Sure. Right? That is the source of his objections, etc. All right? And your goal is, of course, to get the princess to marry you, maybe because you're really actually in love with her, or she just has a lot of money.
Right.
Okay? I don't know which it would be, whatever. Okay? So you have those two goals, right? Mm-hmm. And then you would say, okay, all right, so for the king who wants his princess to marry well, is that more a sort of pathos thing, an ethos thing, or a logos thing?
Well, that would really depend on the approach that the PC took. It's something you would have to
exactly
assign after they chose an action.
Exactly.
So if they are really in love with the king,
mm-hmm.
with the princess,
yes,
then if they can make that impassioned statement of love,
mm-hmm.
that would help the king realize that if his goal is really the happiness of his daughter,
mm-hmm.
then he is looking at it right now.
Right.
Whereas if you recognize that the daughter is marrying below her station, and that is the king's concern, and then try to prove that you have been an upstanding citizen of the kingdom, and that even though you are a commoner, you still represent all of the highest ideals of the nobility, and then that would be sort of a creed, an ethos argument.
Right.
Right.
So once you've decided those things, once you know what remember I said this part as well, was know what the PC's goal is, know what the NPC's goal is. Once you've got those two pieces, then you can say, okay, for this particular situation with this particular goal in mind, this particular approach, you can say, okay, ethos and ethos appeal will move that meter a lot.
Right.
Okay. And a pathos and logos appeal will not move that meter so much.
Right. Logos would probably be the worst because this is entirely an emotional argument.
Right. And so you could say, all right, if they try a logos approach,
mm-hmm.
If they say things that appeal more to logos than they do for that makes a difference, but it doesn't make much of a difference. They'll have to work much harder to make that work.
Or alternatively, if you were doing it in something like D&D, you would set the actual difficulties of the check differently, but have them all move the meter the same amount. So like a logos argument would be a DC 30, but it would, it would still move the meter. Or because D&D is pretty much focused on single rolls and not encounter length rolls, it would be one argument and you win, which mm-hmm. isn't the best in itself, but
no.
Yeah.
You could say you need 3 successes for a logos, you need 2 successes for a pathos, and you need 1 success for an ethos.
So now
if you wanted to.
Here's an interesting question though.
Mm-hmm.
Where does lying fit into this?
Well, lying is definitely a strategy.
Right.
And it is a method of achieving a goal.
Mm-hmm.
So if the lie is targeted to one of those 3,
mm-hmm.
then
obviously
unless
you would still have to have a false argument that you are making.
Right.
And that argument would be the approach.
Right. That would be the approach. So what you do is if it's a false approach, okay, you're lying, so it's a false approach, then provided the lie is not detected,
mm-hmm.
it proceeds as normal. But as soon as there's a lie in place, there's also a chance of detecting the lie. So you do that, and then you do the see whether it worked or not.
I would almost, in that case, because now we're writing a system, here we go. What I would do in that case is actually have your deception be
stand in
as a stand-in. But of course, the consequences for failing that are generally much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because if you fail with a straight up truth, then basically you just don't marry the princess and you get, maybe you get shown out of the throne room.
Right.
But if you fail while lying, well, maybe that's prison time.
Mm-hmm.
Or a heavy fine, or you lose your head.
Or just something as simple as your reputation is destroyed.
Right.
Or all further interactions with this king now are, going to be tainted by that lie.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously ongoing consequences are part and parcel of the whole role-playing gig, but it is. But now, so then you have this. So you would have, on the one hand, these 3 stats, logos, pathos, and ethos, or whatever, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And on the other hand, you would have a set of social skills.
Mm-hmm.
And you would mix and match. So if I was trying to make a rational tit-for-tat argument, or tit-for-tat exchange, I might use my negotiation skill and my logo stat or my intelligence stat.
Right.
If I'm trying to give a rousing speech to encourage a group, it's a group of soldiers and, for king and country and all of that, then I would use my oratory skill and my ethos stat. Whereas if I was giving a lecture and trying to impress some mages, I would still use my oratory skill, but my logo stat.
Right.
There's actually a lot of potential in this.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you have a social system that kind of works.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because then your deception skill just becomes another stand-in for what you're trying to do.
Yep.
Because obviously, even if you're lying to appeal to someone's emotions, you at least have to be emotional enough to put on the guise of emotions. So it should still be a pathos argument.
Mm-hmm.
And to make an ethos argument, you still have to find that person's beliefs, which means you have to have some understanding of it yourself. Yeah. No, there's a lot of potential in this.
Sure.
Huh.
There you go.
Yeah.
See, that was an even better comment than you thought it was.
Yeah, it was. I already thought it was pretty good, but like I said, I just wanted to give a little compliment there that's a neat approach.
Uh-huh.
I actually do try to be positive sometimes.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. Okay, so then we have Leferet, which I'm just going to assume I'm pronouncing correctly, even though the likelihood of that is practically 0.
Yeah, that's French for the ferret, I believe.
Okay. Sure. Commented also on episode 40 when we were talking about character sheets and whatnot. And he says, I have to comment that both of you are right about character sheet design. It's nice we can both be right.
Isn't it, though?
That doesn't happen very often. Visual attention is guided by several factors. One of them is size, so you instinctively look at the big thing first. Visual attention, I'm passing by that entirely. Visual attention guided by features is called top-down visual search. And Brian even admits that, as he says, then after you found the big one, you focus in on the little one. Mm-hmm. However, the opposite is bottom-up search, and that takes into account your prior experiences and the logic you apply to something you search. You're going to look for the search field on website top left, not because humans have a search field instinct, but because that's what you learned. So if you always write the plus in the little box, you are used to it and are better, faster at finding it. If you want to know more, Azalet? I don't know what that's... has written a whole article on character sheet design.
I think Azalet is the author of the post.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, there's... okay, so there is this blog, The Dev's Advocate.
Mm-hmm.
And there are several people who apparently write for the blog, except that currently there is only one entry on this blog.
Yes.
And the Azalet, the Ferret, and the Summoner are the writers on this blog.
Okay.
Okay. This post, because I went and read this post. This post is actually a really interesting examination of several different character sheets and how they're put together from sort of a visual design standpoint. And I think it's really worth reading. Just take a look at. If you have any interest at all in the visual design of this stuff, oh wow, hey,
yes,
your transit character sheet is in here.
Yes, a transit character sheet is in there.
Check that out. I had no idea about that.
Yeah. I was contacted by the individual who's behind all of this. And he needed something to use as an example and wanted to know if he could use the transit character sheets, which nobody has seen and nobody knows anything about because they don't exist, technically. But he used them to demonstrate what he's talking about in the mock-ups and whatnot. And yeah, check it out. It's there. Stuff and things.
Okay, that was really awkward. I'm sorry about that.
That's fine.
I read through most of the post and I said, wow, this is really interesting. And didn't get quite down to the bottom before we started recording.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, transit is the last thing there. Anyway. Oh, look, he plugged our podcast.
It looks nice.
Yeah.
It looks nice.
Yeah.
You know? So, anyhow, yeah. That's not the official sheet, but it's certainly good enough for his example, which we appreciate. And thanks for asking, rather than just doing and seeking, forgiveness.
or just doing.
Yeah.
Which is the usual method on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Just going to do it. So yeah, that'll be another beautiful link in the linky thing where we link stuff. You wanted to mention something called a Focus Keeper app. What is going on here?
Yeah, in my continuing time management thing.
Yes, the tomato method.
Yeah. Well, I found there are several apps that handle the tomato system. I have several iPhone apps. And I found one that I particularly like called Focus Keeper.
Is it shaped like a tomato?
It does have a half tomato in the icon.
Okay.
But it basically just runs a 25-minute timer. And it emits an audible ticking noise at all times while it is running. Which I have discovered is very important because it keeps me from checking social media. And stuff like that. Because it reminds me that I am supposed to be working right now.
Sure.
And then it plays, when it shifts into a break, it plays, you can set it to play different sound effects, like cafe noises to indicate you're on a break, or ocean noises, soothing ocean sounds. Right. But it also keeps track of the number of sessions that you work through the day. And it allows you to set goals and monitors your keeping to those goals. Okay. So it's just a neat little app. I'm only mentioning it because I mentioned the Pomodoro method and a few weeks ago. And I actually like this app. So that's it.
Okay.
That is all.
Thank you for sharing.
I'm very bland this week. I've been busy.
Yeah. You have been busy, and I don't blame you a bit. Tell me everything you know about the West Marches campaigns.
Well, see, that's the funny thing, because I sort of didn't know anything previously.
Huh.
I get a lot of questions from people, obviously.
Right. Are most of them along the lines of "Notice me, Senpai"?
Yeah. Through pretty much every channel imaginable. And lately I have discovered an entire new class of thing, which is Kickstarter spam.
Oh.
Which is people discover your Kickstarter and say, hey, I noticed you've been running a successful Kickstarter. Have you thought about how you're going to handle your shipping? Because I could do it. You know what? I actually did kind of work this out before I went live,
The problem is there must be some people out there who don't.
Right?
Otherwise this wouldn't work. And they wouldn't do it.
I got one today, and I've been trying to politely respond to it. politely responded in a way that's also no thank you. So this person was asking me about, post Kickstarter marketing plans and also fulfillment and, ongoing sales and stuff. I politely said, thank you. But I've already worked out, post Kickstarter marketing plans and everything. But I'll keep you in mind for the next project. And I figured that would be the end of it. And I got an email back and said, hey, thanks for responding. That's great. Just out of curiosity, can I ask what your plans actually are? And I know that trap. Because you tell them, and then they're like, well, obviously you're not thinking of this. It's like,
exactly.
So I actually sent back a little bit more pointed responses. You're just going to have to wait and be surprised like everybody else. So you get one polite one.
Right.
Anyway, sorry.
You told us that to tell us this.
Yeah, so every so often, somebody asks me for my opinion of a West Marches style campaign.
Okay, I don't know what that means.
Well, see, that was the thing. I was actually just going to come to you now because I got another email today about it. And I have no idea what it means. We have a problem as gamers where we just use abbreviations and terminology, even though there's no agreed upon lexicon of jargon for role-playing gamers. People will still assume that you know exactly what they mean by every abbreviation and every term.
Sure.
The number of actual terms that everybody in role-playing gaming knows is vanishingly small. It ends pretty much at Game Master.
This is why nobody knows anything about any of the terms used in role-playing at all.
Right?
Because everybody just assumes everybody else knows. And the people who don't know are so eager to fit in that they never ask.
No, because none of us were socialized properly. So we're all embarrassed to not fit in for even a moment. So we're all just going to nod and say, oh, that's the thing, huh? And then desperately try to look it up on the internet.
Yeah.
So I keep getting, what do you think of West Marches style campaigns? And what I was going to do is come on here tonight and throw the question at you and ask you if you had ever heard of these things.
Okay, so let's try this. Go ahead. Ask me.
Sir, do you know what the hell a West Marches style D&D campaign is?
Nope. Yeah. There. End. Done. No more questions.
Right. And that is precisely why I actually bothered to look this up and sent you that link.
Okay.
So I found... Now, there are several explanations out there. Mm-hmm. Some of them are much longer and more detailed.
Oh.
But these all kind of follow the essentials, and this was posted by Draco in 2016 on the Knight's Semantic webpage, which, it is what it is.
There will be a link.
But it does contain an explanation of a West Marches style campaign.
Okay, so this is for D&D.
This is for D&D. It doesn't have to be for D&D.
No, it says D&D right there.
Yeah, right. Which edition?
Okay, so the official title of this article is The West Marches, a style of D&D campaign for large groups.
Right. And this is apparently something a lot of people have heard of, too.
Okay.
Sorry, continue.
Sure. Not anybody we know, though.
Well, a lot of people who know me.
Okay.
Because I keep getting asked what I think about it and whether I've run one.
When they say large, this is the only thing I want to know. When they say large groups, do they mean about 20 people trying to go through Return of the Temple of Elemental Evil at the same time?
No.
Okay. Because I've run that game and it was no fun.
Yeah, I can imagine that would not be a fun one.
How is this better?
Well, it turns out, though, that actually in reading this, I did get close to running a West Marches campaign twice. So, most recently online.
Oh.
So, you got a large group of people, large amounts of players, far too many to all put in one group and just run regular sessions for. Right?
That's what you think, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Far too many for any reasonable, non-self-hating GM
Yes, some of us don't know any better.
Right.
Some of us just don't know that shouldn't be tried.
Some of us have certainly never tried to run a 15-person Shadowrun game.
No, that would be ridiculous.
Right? Okay. The idea is you've got this big pool of players, and there is a big sandbox type world. There's no regular plot. It's just, here is a world of things to adventure in or at. Okay, just basically explore the environment. Which I assume amounts to, there's a dungeon over here, go down in it and kill the things and take their stuff, right?
Sure.
So what happens is, one of the players, hypothetically, becomes interested in a particular dot on the map, or what have you.
Uh-huh.
Contacts some of the other players in the pool, and says, I would like to have an expedition to go explore the dot on the map. Okay? And then the other players say, sure. And then the players all agree on a time. Okay? And, it'll be Tuesday at 3:00. And then somebody emails the GM and says, Tuesday at 3:00, you're running us on this expedition to this dot on the map. And then the GM shows up and does it.
The hell you say? Oh, and he just shows up. Okay.
The GM just shows up and does it.
All right, fine.
This is the basics.
I already immediately have a couple of problems with this.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Do tell.
Well, how does the GM know what to run?
Because they tell him. They tell the GM, and we're going to explore this dot on the map. So the GM... Right.
But how does the GM know what to run?
What do you mean?
Well, he's just been told that he has to run, we'll say the Caves of Dot. Okay?
Right.
Does he have an adventure for the Caves of Dot laying around?
He's got a week to make it up. Recall, it's not really a quest so much as an exploration.
Okay, so
basically he just needs to map the Caves of Dot, decide what lives there.
Okay, so there's no plot to the Caves of Dot. There's just you're in the Caves of Dot. I'm going to roll on this random table. Here's a dragon. Okay.
Well, it doesn't have to be random, but sure, whatever method you want to use for creating the Caves of Dot, you can use. Okay, but it's basically an old school hex crawl. Yeah, now I'm using old terminology no one knows. / dungeon crawler.
Yes.
Okay.
A hex crawl is where your map is made up of little hex shapes, and your locations are drawn on top of that. And there's never really any plot anywhere. You're just going around looking for plot. Right.
Somewhere out in this world, there is fun adventure. Go find the fun adventure. Good luck.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But this
number
sounds
of hex
more
crawls
like
that I have played in where we spent 2 sessions in a row wandering the wilderness, keeping track of rations and having random encounters because we couldn't find the fun adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this sounds a little different. Like it's kind of sort of found a way around that problem, which is that the players get all the time they want to look at the map and look at the spaces upon it and the locations, and maybe they go to the Caves of Dot, maybe they go to Dotsville, maybe they go to the Grove of Dot or whatever, but it's all laid out there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And they decide there's going to be an adventure here at, the Caves of Dot.
Right.
Is that the kind of the thing?
Pretty much.
Okay. All right.
I mean, it's what? Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm missing something.
I feel like it too, because my next question is, okay, how many players, how big is the pool for how many players do you need in the pool for this to work all the time?
This person said there were about 10 to 14 people in the one they ran.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, I assume also that the GM could do things like when they explore the Cave of Dot, put a treasure map in there that might lead to the hills of over there and suggest there might be treasure there. And that might, and then obviously the players would say, okay, well, let's get an expedition going to that. or, while the players are doing something, because this does reference things like hearing rumors of stuff and whatever. Here, that was an excellent description. Hearing rumors and stuff or whatever. Uh-huh. But, they might hear rumors while they're interacting with the people of a village about a location somewhere else, and then they might decide to mount an expedition there. Okay, which is, to be honest, the right way to run a hex crawl.
Sure.
Right? Have a way for the players to find out vaguely where the fun stuff is and draw them to it, right?
So you've got players keeping track of where the fun stuff is supposed to be.
Right. But ultimately
and then deciding which of those fun things they want to go do.
Right. This just to me seems like a sandbox style game with too many players that greatly inconveniences the GM.
Kind of.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, the scheduling, like, is it necessary for the scheduling to be like that?
Well, is
it not West Marches unless the players can demand the GM show up at a particular time and place?
Yeah, I don't really know what. How is this? I don't see, because in my mind I'm thinking, okay, how do we make this easy for the GM? Well, first off, the GM has 4 standard adventures,
mm-hmm.
and he keeps track of which people have played which adventures.
Right.
And so then maybe you have a cave one, maybe you have an in-town one, maybe you have a wilderness one. Okay, mm-hmm. Whatever.
Sure.
Right. So the GM knows that players 1, 2, 3, and 4 have gone through the cave, but players 5 through 15 have not.
Right.
So the next time he gets a mix of players that haven't gone through the cave, he can use the cave again if that's what they want to do.
Right.
So he's only written 1 cave adventure, and he can use that 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with a village adventure, same thing with a wilderness adventure, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So he saves a little bit there.
Right.
But he still, I guess if there's no plot, he doesn't have to worry about writing adventures on short notice that involve any kind of plot or anything that. But like you said, you still want to include things that tell them where the next neato adventure is.
I would think so, but I'm also assuming that. I mean, hypothetically, all he's got to do is draw a dungeon map and stock it with something.
Yeah.
I mean, just come on,
sprinkle things.
You and I could slap out dungeon adventures like, short single session dungeon adventures.
Yeah, I don't even have to write them down.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I got a call tomorrow and was told, okay, we're going on an expedition to the Caves of Dot, be here tomorrow at 12, I'd be like, okay, fine. I got it. Cave of Dot has rattle, kobolds.
Oh,
no, I've done kobolds before. Let's do gnolls.
Okay. Yeah. It's oozes this week.
Yeah, right. It's the Cave of Oozes.
That's right. Okay, I kind of understand that part, but I don't understand why this is better than, say, not doing this.
Well,
is it just purely a scheduling problem? Is that what's going on? We've come up with a complex way to solve a scheduling problem.
That's what I want to know about this. Is not that is what was the problem for which this is the optimal solution. While I do admit this could be an interesting way to run a game, and I have no problem with sandbox campaigns, I have no problems with large groups of swap in, swap out type situations, I mean, I ran that myself online but it was mission based. It was like people could sign up for different missions. This would be this adventure on this day. You know, why is it the players that are in charge of the scheduling, and
because there's more of them?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
But it seems like that could also be something that is just set up with like a GM who sets up like 6 sessions a month at varying spots on the calendar. And then players can work to meet that. But that's the thing. It's like, I want to know what the problem was for which this is the optimal solution.
Yeah.
Okay. Because every problem I can come up with that might be solved by this becomes a kludge solution. a solution that is more complicated than the problem it was trying to solve.
What? I don't... it seems to me that if your problem was scheduling and not really knowing who could be at any given session at any given time, it'd be far more effective to run a Pathfinder Society kind of model, which is basically, okay, all adventures, quote unquote adventures, or all assignments are given out at a central location. Ostensibly, it's where all the adventurers gather between, having adventures or whatever.
Right. The standard Adventurers Guild model.
Right. Adventurers Guild model. And then, just whoever's there, they go on the adventure. The adventure is done in one. It has to be done in one. And then the next time somebody, whoever you've got next time, they go out and they have another adventure and it's done in one.
Right. At which point the GM could actually write a different adventure every week anyway.
Right.
Because he's still just running one adventure a week and, now you're just prepping for one session. And then there's never a chance that a player would end up playing on an adventure they've already been on.
Right.
But if it's really important that the players get some say in which adventures, then the GM can bring 4 adventures, write 4 adventures before the campaign starts, bring all 4 of them. The group that shows up picks one, and now that adventure is done. And in the week between that and the next session, the GM makes a new adventure to fill in that 4th adventure slot, and now there's still 4 choices for next week, right? And then the players can still pick between 4 missions. Which ones do you want to do? In fact, that's actually might be a better model than that mission-based model. You gotta write that down, too.
Write that down.
But yeah, it's like, what is this fixing?
Why? Okay, put yourself in the shoes of a player. I know it's been a long time, but try. Stretch your imagination. Put yourself in the shoes. I don't like doing that. I feel dirty. Okay, what's the attraction of this to you as a player?
Well, honestly, as a player, this would scratch a couple of my itches, because that I thrive on exploration-based gameplay. So the idea of here's a map, you get to just pick a place, mount an expedition, and go see what's there, and then just follow the breadcrumbs across the map on a whim. Yeah, that would appeal to me. And also because I am like an A-type personality, a dominant type personality, the idea that I could actually play a character who is also gathering other adventurers to mirror the fact that I would probably be one of the people who is constantly trying to draw people in and say, okay, we're doing an expedition here, so I'm going to pick, Alice, Bob, and Carol and email them and try to work out a schedule and pull them. So basically, I would be doing all the administrative work of a GM as a player. Which
see, because I can see where the advantage is for the GM, and it is in shuffling that administrative stuff off to the players
to some extent. But does that trade off the inconvenience of having to maintain such an open schedule, because you are going to be told what adventure to write and when to show up with it ready?
Yeah, no, it does not.
Right? I still think there's a more egalitarian approach to that could be found.
There's got to be something we're missing with this.
I think so.
What is that thing we are missing?
All you people who are asking about the West Marches campaigns, like they are the pinnacle of game design and structure here, or whatever. Why? Tell me what it is. What aren't we seeing? Comments, emails, whatever. I don't care. I feel like we're missing something.
Why is it called West Marches? Is it hearkening back to somebody else's campaign?
My guess from the limited research I've done is that was the name of the first one. Like somebody ran this type of campaign and called it West Marches.
I am now officially incurious.
Right? Yeah, wait, I think I found the original.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
The rules, roleplay West Marches. Okay, so let's see what's going on here, because I've got an answer on supposedly an answer on Stack Exchange here. Which
okay.
I will bloop at you.
Yeah.
Where are you? Oh, there you are. So let's see here. What defines a West Marches campaign? All right. No regular time. Every session is scheduled by the players on the fly. There are no regular party. Each game has different players drawn from a pool of around 10 to 14 people. There are no regular plot. The players decide where to go and what to do. Right. This sounds like the thing we just read.
Right, which I am discovering was actually mostly cut and pasted from the original blog post where the guy was describing the game he ran.
Mm-hmm.
And I put a link to you in the Discord as well.
Okay, all right. So here's okay, somebody who is actually adding information. Ben Robbins, I guess.
Yeah, where it says there's a bit more to it, implied but not explicit.
Yep. So one is every game session begins and ends at the same point of origin.
The hometown.
Normally a hometown, right?
Right, okay.
The players decide where to go and what to do in advance.
Right, we kind of understood that. They have to tell the GM where they're going.
Session reports are always shared.
Okay.
So all the potential players in the pool know the adventure as it happened. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Shared world map, potentially unreliable. Competition between players is actively encouraged. Oh.
Okay.
That's a little different. And the content is loosely tiered. And I think we might have to blame Matt Colville for bringing this to everybody's attention.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. So at a bare minimum, what you have is a group you don't have a regular group of players, but you have a large pool for each session.
Mm-hmm.
And each session is entirely self-contained, and there is probably a focus on exploration. That seems to be the consensus.
Okay.
All right. This is making a little more sense. The competition thing is what makes it sound interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially if I were doing it, it wouldn't just be because it says, magic items on the line and stuff. It would be interesting to include some sort of advancement or reputation system so that the players, just like being the first person to discover something and put your name on it or add it to the map, would gain you a certain amount of renown.
And the players make the map. Okay, hang on here. So competition between players is actively encouraged. Jealousy is considered to be a useful motivational force in getting sessions booked and games actually played. If anyone else can pick up from the interesting place where you last left off, or someone else has discovered something exciting, then that motivates you to prioritize organizing your next session, especially when magic items are on the line. Okay, that makes more sense. That at least tells me what the player's interest is.
Right, but this still, my question is still, what is the GM's interest in this?
Yeah, I'm not getting that.
Because my biggest concern with all of this is just that it is tremendously inconvenient for a GM. Just in terms of trying to schedule your life,
Mm-hmm. Is this another way to take control away from the GM?
Probably. But see, this is a different kind of way. It's motivated in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the narrative control thing, give players narrative control over the world because it makes them love the world more, which never works because it doesn't really work that way. But anyway, I don't know. I still feel like even with this extra information.
Okay, hold on. Before you render judgment. I have gone to the guy, this Ben fella, his actual blog where this thing apparently started. Okay?
Right. The Ars Ludi.
Now, yeah. He says, my motivation in setting things up this way was to overcome player apathy and mindless plot following by putting the players in charge of both scheduling and what they did in game.
It seems like maybe if you were a better GM. I mean, I'm sorry to say that. But my first response is if the players don't care and all they're doing is mindlessly following the plot, your world and your plots are boring. You know, I obviously I don't know Ben from anybody else, and I don't mean to insult another GM. But whenever I hear a GM whining about my players are not interested in my game, it's like, well, stop making it boring, dummy. My secondary goal was to make the schedule adapt to the complex lives of adults. Ad hoc scheduling and a flexible roster meant ideally people got to play when they could, but didn't hold up the game for everyone else if they couldn't. If you can play once a week, that's fine. If you can only play once a month, that's fine too. Fine, but I guess it's, the good of the many outweighs the good of the one, because this still seems like it seems like all you're doing is shifting all of the scheduling inconvenience onto one person, the GM. And letting the players decide where to go was also intended to nip DM procrastination, aka my procrastination, in the bud. Normally a DM just puts off running a game until he's 100% ready, which is sometimes never, but with this arrangement, if the players wanted to raid the Sunken Fort this weekend, I had to hurry up and finish it. It was game on demand. Do you not have regular sessions? Or maybe just set yourself a dead... So, what this seems to me is, again, the GM is just bad at managing a game.
Yeah.
Is that just me?
I still don't feel like... I mean, we know... Okay, now we know the problems he was trying to solve, or at least the problems he says he was trying to solve.
Right.
But I still don't... I don't know. Go ahead.
Hold on a second. I just looked at the links on the right-hand side. Okay, and followed the connections. Ben is Ben Robbins, who created Microscope, among other things.
Okay. Am I supposed to go ooh and ah? Because I will if you tell me I'm supposed to, but I'm not.
No, it's Microscope. It is what it is. It's an interesting toy. But no, it's just like it's just interesting to discover that this isn't just anybody. This is somebody. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Somebody who has done a thing.
Yeah.
And not just bashed out their own home version.
Right. And that's...
Okay.
Especially because Microscope is pretty well put together. I don't know about the other stuff. I don't know Microscope Explorer or Kingdom or any of the other stuff he's done. But considering he clearly has management issues and a really bizarre sense of fixing organizational problems, he did. It's impressive that he managed to put together the game that he did.
Okay, so all right. So here's what he's got under advice for running your own. Okay.
Okay.
He says make towns safe and the wilds wild.
That's good advice in general.
Yeah. Basically the town becomes your home base. Okay. And keep NPC adventurers rare or even better non-existent. So the players are the only ones out there exploring and doing things. Build dungeons with treasure rooms, locked rooms, pockets of danger. So that it's not just them waltzing through something, killing monsters, and then there's the treasure. Right. Basically. Okay?
And also that it gives them reasons to have to retreat and maybe come back. Or leave stuff undone in the dungeon. You can't just clear an area in one go. Okay.
So for actually running it, he says appear passive. The world may be active, but the GM should appear to be passive. You're not killing the party. The direwolf is. It's not you, it's the world. Okay. He also has the roll dice in the open thing.
All right, I'm with him on that.
Okay. Provide an easy lead to get new players started. Once players are out exploring, each new discovery motivates them to search more. But how do you get them started? So every time I introduced a batch of new players, I gave them a very basic treasure map that vaguely pointed to somewhere in the West Marches and then let them go look for it. All right.
Which
the adventure is in...
Which we kind of surmised would have to be the case.
Right.
So, which again is good. I mean, like, clearly from this, he's got a really good grasp of the design of a sandbox setting, a sandbox campaign.
The adventure is in the wilderness, not the town. As per the discussion of NPCs above, be careful not to change the focus to urban adventure instead of exploration. Okay.
Right, and also the town is safe, the adventure is in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
The overworld, underworld distinction.
Right. Let the players take over. Don't write game summaries. Don't clean up the shared map. You want the players to do all those things. Okay. Competition is what it's all about. Fair reward, scarcity, bragging rights. These are the things that push the game higher. You could have a solo West Marches game with just one group doing all the exploring, and it would probably be a fun and pleasant affair, but it's nothing compared to the frenzy you'll see when the players know other players are out there finding secrets and taking treasure that they could be getting. If only they got their butts out of the tavern. Okay. Require scheduling on the mailing list. It doesn't matter whether a bunch of players agreed to go on an adventure when they were out bowling. They have to announce it on the mailing list or web form, whichever you're using. Okay.
Right. Well, that's just good sense.
Fear the social monster, it says. This is the big, big granddaddy of all warnings. Even more so than mini games, West Marches is a social beast. In normal games, players have an established place in the group. They know they are supposed to show up every Tuesday to play. They don't have to think about that or worry about whether they belong in the group. On the other hand, West Marches is a swirling vortex of ambition and insecurity. How come no one replied when I tried to get a group together last week? Why didn't anybody invite me to raid the Ogre Cave? And so on, ad infinitum. The thrilling success or catastrophic failure of your West Marches game will largely hinge on the confidence or insecurity of your player pool. Buckle up.
So it's a sandbox game with high school social interaction.
It feels that way, and it relies heavily on fear of missing out.
Okay, this sort of now kind of falls in line with his goals a bit more.
Yeah,
because he had what I'm seeing here is a GM who was growing bitter about the players not caring as much about the world or the game as he did, and not taking any time between game sessions to do anything, probably missing or skipping out on sessions. And he was starting to get burnt out and tired of it, to the point where he began procrastinating and letting games just get pushed off and getting pushed off. And finally he snapped.
Okay.
And found a way to basically lock his players into a battle royale, but tell them that they were all not allowed to kill each other by ostensibly putting them on the same team, but playing them against each other. And he also didn't have to come up with a way to do that in plot, because now all he has to do is have a map.
He provides a map. Well, he doesn't even provide the map. The players make the map, as I understand it.
He's got to have a map. He's got to know what's out there.
Well, yeah, he has like the big map, but he doesn't make it.
Right.
The players make it. The players set it up and put things on it and keep track of where things are and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it's up to them to maintain it. And sometimes, they don't do it very well. And so things get confused, and that's just part of what they go figure out and fix.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's all very interesting, and I'm kind of glad that he refers to this as the grand experiment. Because ultimately that's the most sense I get from this, is that it was, he had this idea and he decided to try it out and tinker with it and see what would work. And it was something that in the end, through the synergy of everything he did, turned out to be a lot of fun, probably, Okay. And I don't doubt that this could be a fun way to structure a game,
So then I guess the question is, sir, what do you think of a West Marches campaign?
It's a fascinating experiment, but not one I'd ever run.
Okay.
But there are many elements of it I would use.
Sure. I would steal liberally from that plan.
Yeah.
But I would not run the whole plan as is.
No, and I'm also going to confess that I'm not a big fan of just the sandbox where the exploration is the only goal. You know what I mean? Where you have, here's the map of the world. It's filled with stuff. Go find the stuff, because that's exciting and fun. And even myself, as an exploration-driven gamer, or I guess it's a discovery-driven gamer, I still ultimately prefer to have a structure to that discovery. Like, I liked Arkham Asylum, but not Arkham City.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll play Horizon Zero Dawn, but Skyrim is too much for me.
Right.
You know? Because there's just it's too much, it's too open, you know, and so you just feel like you're visiting dots on a map to visit dots on a map, you know.
Yeah, you're only going there because you haven't been there yet.
Right. It's got to, like, the discovery, the exploration has to be in aid of something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so.
Okay.
And I still don't see the benefit of putting the players in control of the schedule.
Yeah, I suppose if you have his particular set of problems and his particular set of things you want to correct, then maybe this is okay.
Yeah.
For you. And maybe it does correct those. I don't know. Because he doesn't really say what the results of the experiment were. Or at least he doesn't do it in the first few pages that we looked at. Mm-hmm. But I have to think there are... I don't relish the thought of sitting down at a table, particularly if my schedule is so messed up that I can only attend some sessions and that actually getting to play is a rarity,
mm-hmm.
which it sounds like was kind of the situation that one of the situations he was trying to correct.
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly relish the thought of sitting down to do a story I have to make up on my own.
Uh-huh.
You know?
Well, let's be fair though. A sandbox. I mean, for all you could say, okay, this is an emergent story because it's the story of the stuff that happens in the game.
Mm-hmm.
The truth of the matter is, a sandbox is a non-story driven game.
Right.
Okay. Which it is what it is. But I want to revise what I said now, because you know what this really sounds like? He wanted to run a sandbox, and that's not what his players wanted.
Mm.
And he's running a non-sandbox, running a story-driven adventure, a plot-driven adventure, what have you, wasn't as natural to him. And so he ended up setting down breadcrumbs, and the players would follow the breadcrumbs, but they took no initiative on their own. And so he set out to solve that problem, which sort of makes sense when you look at what he did with Microscope.
Mm-hmm.
Which is basically a collaborative world building game, where he is a world builder. I think, you know, that's his big thing. You know, and a sandbox style game is perfect for the world builder who is world builder first and everything else second. You know, here I have made this awesome world filled with interesting things. Go and explore it and find all the things that are interesting. And again, I'm not saying this with disdain for sandbox style play. There are people who love it, and I have no problem with it. But
okay, yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. If his thing is to be able to play in sand, because not everybody's at home with a sandbox style,
right?
And if his players have shut down to the point where they're literally just at the table following plot and not really thinking, I think maybe is the part he left out. They're not really thinking about what's going on. They're not engaged with it. They're just going through the motions to get to the end of the story.
Though we only have his word for that.
Yeah,
have to be You have to be careful about that, because the players can be perfectly happy doing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're not playing in the way that the GM thinks is the most fun way to play,
right?
The GM thinks they're doing something wrong. Like, it's the classic example. You have the wallflower player, right? That one player who never engages with anything. And he never really speaks up, and you rarely gets directly involved in the game. And so you desperately try to draw him into the game and pull him into the game and put him on the spot and whatever. And only years later do you discover that actually he's just quiet and shy, but he was perfectly happy just to be hanging out with his friends and doing something. That's all he wanted out of the game. And you were making it worse for him by drawing him in. You know, the player is just there to hang out with his friends.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so there are a lot of problems with this West March thing.
I think so.
But in principle, is it? I mean, is it worth trying in principle if you meet certain specific conditions?
Well, again, as I've said, if you make some substitutions in what he did, I have done this at least twice.
Okay.
I didn't know to call it West Marches. One was was plot and mission based. Mm-hmm. But it also did have elements of reputation and competition between the players.
Right.
Where they're on the same team, but they also wanted to be renowned as the best, everybody wanted to be the MVP. Kind of a thing. Which I think is that's sort of the that middle ground that he seems to be hitting for.
Mm-hmm.
Though actually I don't know, because he does have a little bit of a mean-spirited talk about that, where it's like, he wants some paranoia. Like, why didn't everybody invite me? Just like, this is why I'm glad I'm out of high school, for not dealing with that crap. But yeah, I have done this before, modified, but not exactly this. And, and I did it for specific reasons, because I had more players than I could run games for, and was obligated to run games for them anyway, in one case. And in another case, it was just a curious experiment, because again, I had a lot of people who would play in games, and was curious to try and set up a world that they could all participate in.
Yeah.
But I don't lean towards sandbox play to begin with, so the sandbox aspects are the biggest things I'm missing. So if people say that that's vital to the West Marches experience, then no, I've never run West Marches, and probably never would. But if you lighten up on the sandbox aspect, then yeah, I've run West Marches and a modified West Marches, and it's fine if you set it up right and if you run it right. But that's true of anything, isn't it?
Well, you would think so, yes.
I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think I would do this.
Yeah.
I don't think I have personal, my personal taste is not towards that style. Mm-hmm. I don't think I would enjoy it. I think I would be rather frustrated with it in its entirety. And I would constantly wonder why the GM isn't doing more.
Yeah.
Why are you just sitting there? What's supposed to be going on here? What are we doing all this for? Oh, we're just out exploring. No, that's not good enough.
Though, you know what, though? Like, again, if you're willing to make some changes to this West Marches approach and be a little more mission-based and a little less sandboxy, imagine a game like this structured for, like, say, hypothetically, in Star Wars during the Rebel Alliance period, where you've got a pool of, 15 players who are playing members of the Rebellion. Mm-hmm. And you pull them together for, Rebel missions.
Yeah, and you send them off to a planet or whatever. I mean,
yeah, or to strike at a Imperial convoy, or pick up a prisoner before the Empire can get at them, or not. I guess they wouldn't be a prisoner at that point. Pick up a contact before they. Yeah,
you would need. I still feel like the GM needs to provide something to chain it all together.
I agree with that. That's why I said that the biggest problem for me here is the sandbox aspect.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be very heavily chained together.
No.
It's not like you have to have a full-blown plot with, 20 characters decided ahead of time and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be chained together like that. It just needs a thing to connect the thing you did last time to the thing you're doing this time.
Well, in a case like that, the premise becomes the connecting factor. Like I said, well, okay, you're all members of the Rebel Alliance, Rebel Alliance. Right. So that alone chains everything together.
Yeah, that's its own plot.
Right.
Because the Rebel Alliance exists for a reason, which is to oppose the Empire at every turn.
Right.
That's its own plot. That is the plot under which all the sandboxing can happen, and that's fine.
And at that point, the premise just becomes an excuse, but then in each mission, you have a goal beyond here.
Yeah, it's all relates back to the main premise.
Right.
But this West Marches thing it doesn't sound like that exists.
No. In fact, it seems to very clearly and purposefully eschew that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, well, I feel like that's settled then.
Yeah, I think we really talked that out.
I've been reading. I finally have had a chance to read through Realms of Terranoth book for the Genesis system from FFG.
Right.
I'm about halfway through of an actual read through.
Oh, very good. What do you think of it so far?
You'll hate me for it, but I like the chunky background.
The chunky
background? Yeah, it has the first 40 odd pages are just all the history of the entire, Minara, it's called, is the major land, and Terranoth is the principal area within it. But I like all the Minara history because it's leaving me lots of places to grab hold of plot hooks and bring them forward and say, oh, okay, so everybody thought for thousands of years this was dealt with, but guess what? That kind of stuff I think I enjoy finding in there. And of course they do that on purpose,
Just out of curiosity, why would I hate you for saying that?
Well, because we had a discussion here a while back about how, backstory really, the backstory of the world and all that wasn't all that much useful.
Okay.
That kind of stuff. You remember that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
and to a certain extent.
So here's if you're buying a setting book, then that's, you're buying it for that reason.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But, and to a certain extent, there's a lot of, there is the idea that, okay, if this was all so interesting, why are we not doing that instead of this?
Right.
That kind of thing. And I'm with you on that. There's a lot of settings that are like 1,000 years ago, the big battle occurred.
I would like to have been in that battle.
Yeah, that would have been fun. Why am I poking around this village looking for whoever stole that teapot,
right?
Or whatever. That kind of, there's a certain amount of that, but I think there's enough there. And this is what I really like to do. There's enough there to bring forward and say, okay, this is the history. These are all the things we thought were dealt with and taken care of and, whatever. But you know what? They're not. They're still little pockets, little remnants, little problem areas that could very easily become the third or fourth or eighth age of whatever. In this case, it's periods of darkness. There are 3 periods of darkness, which are the major wars, basically. Right. So it would be the 4th period of darkness. But also, I have a better sense of how the world runs thanks to that backstory than I would if it was just a few pages here and there. Because there's a lot of room in 40 pages especially the font size this book is written in. I would say it's not your standard font size. It's a little smaller than you might normally get, but that just means there's a lot of stuff packed in there. And I'm finding the way things are set up to be pretty interesting, and the magic system is, I would say, fairly unique, because it all seems to be based on these rune shards. Basically, there was an attempt to gather powerful magic into one object. That was, of course, unsuccessful, and it shattered, and now there are all these shards. And some of those
always happens when you try to gather magic in one place.
I know, it's amazing how often that happens. But these rune shards, they're shards of this thing, and they each contain some magic, and they've been inscribed with runes by various means. I'm not going to get into the whole backstory and whatnot. But now they each have a specific effect, and it seems quite likely that there are thousands of them. But what that means is anybody who possesses one of those can do its magic. It's like the simplest thing to activate the magic that is in those rune shards. So you could literally outfit an entire army with some, if you had enough, that kind of thing, and everybody in the army could use it. But there are also some bigger magics at work as well that you can get into that are sort of filtered through these rune shards, or some of the bigger shards, whatever. Anyway, the point being, the magic system relies on these runes, these rune shards to really work the way you want it to work. There's so far, and I'm just beginning to really get into the magic system and read up on it. But so far, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of, spell levels and number of uses per day and, that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's just, you have the magic. And much like we had discussed previously, you can add some effects to that magic,
right?
In a fairly modular way. So,
but
we'll see.
But all magic has a chance to succeed or fail, right? Built into
right,
it. Yeah.
right.
Because that's the thing people forget, that apart from, because I was having a conversation about magic today, I think, or the other day. I have a lot of conversations about magic.
Right.
And in D&D, all spells always work.
Right.
You know,
they might not all hit the target, but they always work.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because people say, oh, well, sometimes you have to make an attack roll, and sometimes the target gets a saving throw. And it's like, yeah, but the spell works. And all the other spells, like like a spell, like the knock spell, it works. It just automatically unlocks the door. Okay? So, the fireball launches fire, and the fire explodes. People might dodge it and take half damage or no damage or whatever, but the spell always works. There's no failure of magic.
It's always used.
Right. Which is why there has to be a limited ammo in D&D.
Right.
And I'm not even talking about adding consequences for failure at that point. It's just like, it's never, the spell is never wasted. It never just doesn't go off.
Yeah.
So. Because then you can get away with that, like you said, where there's not a lot of spell levels and there's not a lot of resources to spend. You don't need them. Right. You just got to do that whole giant dice pool thing to cast magic. I'm never going to not like it, sir.
Whiny. Yeah. But anyway, I'm getting into that now. Finally getting a chance to, what was this, like 5 months down the road? I finally get a chance to actually read the book.
Well, let's see. How long ago did I buy Genesis?
Yeah.
For that matter, how long ago did I buy Starfinder?
Yeah.
Still haven't opened that one either. Yeah, so
I haven't even begun to read City of Mist, and that's a much larger book.
What's City of Mist?
City of Mist is a Kickstarter I backed.
Oh, okay.
It's a Powered by the Apocalypse thing.
Oh, one of those.
Yeah, sort of a superhero noir thing, kind of, but not really. But that's the best explanation I'm going to give you right now. Because as I just mentioned, I haven't read the entire book. It's chunky though. I know I've said this before, but it started out, it was going to be digest sized.
Yeah.
And it is now full on 600 and some odd pages thick. Actual tome size.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. You can understand my reluctance to dive into it right away.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that sounds interesting.
It is so far. The next time you will be with us is next episode, correct? Yes?
Yeah, I will be with you next episode, but I'm afraid that I will be missing the following episode.
You will be missing the following episode. I have lined up a special guest.
Oh.
For that day.
So I'm not that hard to replace.
Well, you are kind of, but my point is that we will have a special guest, and that episode, so 2 weeks from now, will primarily be a discussion of the book that we read this previous month.
I noticed that you didn't immediately go for the joke that, that I am easy to replace, because you realized what I was telegraphing right there. Yeah. Of getting myself out of this stupid commitment.
Not going to happen. You are stuck.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep an eye on. We will, of course, remind you again next show or next episode or whatever the thing is. But for right now,
wait.
I think.
Wait.
What?
Look, this is the last time. This is the last opportunity I'm going to have to say this.
What?
If it is not 9:00 yet, and you're listening to this on Thursday the 19th, and you haven't backed my Kickstarter yet, go back my Kickstarter.
Go back his Kickstarter before you're out of time.